there are legends in their own mind, largely created by Twitter. And then there are real legends who've actually done something. And today I introduce you one of the latter. Harold Bullock was the founding pastor of Hope Church in Fort Worth, Texas in 1978. He was the first person I met who taught these two things. Number one, you can plant a great church without ever having facilities. And number two, you can plant a great church that doesn't grow to a mega church, but instead grows to a point that it spins off church plants as a way to expand God's kingdom. For 40 years, Hope has been doing these things. I moved to Oregon in 1989 and planted a church. It was written into our founding documents that we would never have facilities because I wanted to grow a church that wasn't facility dependent. And second, it was written into our documents that we would grow as large as public facilities permitted in our community and then spin off 200-member church plants. And the church in Oregon has been doing that kind of ministry for all these years as well. Harold is accompanied today by his wife, Deborah, who's here. And you stand, let's say hi to you, that's fine. And also by Matt Sturdivant, who's executive pastor now at Hope and is accompanying Harold and Deborah as they travel today. Harold has influenced hundreds of church planters. In fact, about 20 of them are in the audience today who are planting in the greater Los Angeles area. I asked him this morning, out of Hope Church, how many church plants do you think there have been? And he said, well, I like to say 100 because I know I'm underestimating it and won't have to give an account ever for that. But I pressed him a little bit, and he said it's probably up around 240 churches that have come out of that church over the last 40 years. Would you welcome today our honored guest, Harold Bullock. Pastor, come on.
Just in case it counts. I'll leave it a little bit there. You're going to fight the biggest battles of your life between here and here. That's just how it is. What I'd like to do in our time today is give you just a brief flyover of Hope Church plant and mine and Deborah's life just a little bit, and then talk about the things that really drive us forward. The ministry, motivation. First, just to fly over to give you some context for myself and my wife. By the way, if it weren't for Deborah, I don't know where I would be. I probably wouldn't be as happy. I don't know where I would be. Her faith over and over again has really helped anchor me. This is a team effort. 1970, for the first time, I saw this. Doheny Library, campus of USC. Pretty place, been in a lot of movies. I was impressed. I'd come to work on my doctorate in chemistry at USC and had a sense that God was going to do something in my life, but I had no real grasp of what that was. By the end of 1970, that was January, end of 1970, my life had turned 180 degrees. Wow. And I was learning how to walk with God, and I was praying about whether I should be noble and teach college or go back to Kodak and make a lot of money. And the answer came, neither. You're going into the ministry. That was a shocker. But God confirmed it over and over again. 1971, I married my wonderful wife in East LA. We attended church in East LA. She was a UCLA student. Felt like God had called her from Oklahoma to witness on campus at UCLA. Got in and did that. We ran across each other. I tried to make sure she didn't get a chance to run across someone else. We were married in 71. God had already called into ministry. In 72, I began to work for the LA Association as a director of student ministry, starting student ministries around the eastern LA area. We got 8 going. And then the Lord led to finish up seminary. The call seemed to be Southwestern, so we went there and finished in 77. Both of us were able to do our MDiv because we did not have children. So God seemed to be directing to plant a church, and the direction came for Fort Worth. I wanted to come back to Los Angeles. I'd gotten over winter. I liked LA. But the direction came for Fort Worth. So in 1978, we began to try to plant a church. This was the idea. I've been in ministry about 7 years. Develop a church that would grow in already developed areas. And because there are all kinds of people who could be won to Christ there. Evangelize and incorporate the unchurched. These next statements are pretty standard now. When we came up with them long, long ago in a galaxy far, far away, they were revolutionary concepts. This is the house we began in. We have that picture. It may be hard to see. I looked a little better then. We began old part of town. We picked the worst time you could pick to start the church. We didn't know that. This was before all kinds of writing had been done on church planting. The worst time of year, January, and then the worst winter from 1898 to 2018. Normally it freezes 10 to 12 times in Texas. That winter it froze 66 times. So it was a challenge. We started in an apartment club room. One of the members had arranged it for us. We got there, and a radio broadcaster was on, rah, 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 and there was no way to turn it off. They'd lost the key to the radio closet. So we went home, went to our place, and I felt like God had said something to us through it, and that was, it's not the style, it's whether or not you're going to make it happen. So we had a worship service in our house, and we began. For a lot of years, the finances were minimal. I remodeled that old house in lieu of rent, and we did without a lot. And then others sacrificed with us. When I was 38, I started at 31 and a half. When I was 38, Deborah bought a dress at Sears. Until then, she had bought them at the resale shops. But it didn't bother her. It was just like that. And again, the others sacrificed with us. We hired more staff to keep on developing people. In 96, finally, salaries went up to an adequate level. The old house today, let me show you what it looks like. It's a parking lot for a medical office. The Lions Club, this is our first public worship place. If we could have that next one. Later became a bar. You go into the club on the weekends, you roll out the kegs, air the place out before worship starts. This is a sermon time in 1978. This is a church of 20-somethings. Here's a historic picture. This is 1980. A mission team went out. If we have that next slide. Mission team went out. I don't know if you recognize the tall blonde guy at the back left. This is Rick Warren. I'd known Rick in California. He was a student while I was a student director. And he began the church. We sent a team out to do surveys for him as he began his church. And so they made a picture. That was fun. Hope has continued over the years. In rental mode for 20 years in order to better train church starters. We've stalled at various sizes. You pick one, we've stalled at it. We finally grew too large for the large hotels in town. So after 20 years, we bought, 18 years, bought and remodeled the property that we moved into in year 20. It's at a freeway intersection. Hope's building has about 64,000 square feet. You can see downtown in the background. It's 75 feet longer than a football field and 20 feet wider. We created an interior village so that we could host non-Christians pretty easily. We wanted an environment where we could do that. So we created Main Street, and the storefronts are they're architectural clips out of historic buildings in town. So they're imitation wooden sidewalks and street lamps. This is looking one direction. This is looking in another direction down what we call Main Street. Hope over time became multi-generational. Normally churches get started and they tend to grow old together and die. We've tried to keep on bringing in the younger bunch. So this is a picture, young dad in the foreground there. Since we're at seminary today and books are important, I want to show you this. These are books that Deborah and I have written. So I just wanted you to know that. Here's Deborah and me in this time frame. 1992 Bullock Family. 2017 Bullock Family. The work has taken a lifetime that we've done. So here's your picture. You are somewhere probably in between these two. I want to talk to you about motivation, and I want to move fairly quickly because motivation is what you really run out of in the middle of that thing going on between here and here. The Bible talks about this, but I want to say several things about it. The ministry motivation, we all do what makes sense to us. You do not do what does not make sense to you. Everyone that you run around with does what makes sense to them. It may make no sense to you, but it makes sense to them. Even people who had psychotic breaks are doing what makes sense to them. I know I've worked with them. Just given their frame of reference now, it all makes sense to them. We do this. We operate this way. We do what we want most in the situation. You may be really angry or really upset, and someone you want to impress walks by. And, hi! And then you can go back to being depressed. We do what makes sense to us. And this really impacts our lives. We do what we want most given how we see the situation. What motivates ministers? What I want most will drive my attitudes, my words, my actions, and my decisions. The Apostle Paul indicated that people in the ministry might even have bad motivations. Here's his statement. You can read those, Philippians 1. Some preach Christ out of envy and rivalry, others out of goodwill. And then the former out of selfish ambition, not sincerely. Even more devastating statement, Philippians 2, next chapter. I hope to send Timothy to you, for I have no one like him who will be genuinely interested in your welfare. For the others all, not some, all, seek to advance their own interests, not those of Jesus Christ. Now, he's in Rome at this time, and there are a bunch of guys around who are quoted in the ministry. So how well do selfish motives really serve you in the long haul? Self-focus, jealousy, selfish ambition. Selfish ambition is, I want what I want. I will have my goal, and I will step on you if I need to. Selfish ambition. Factionalism. These cause young men to destroy their futures. And sometimes they develop successful older men, and they cause blow-ups. The people blow up in their 40s or 50s. These things are always close to us. As long as things are going well, you can rock along selfishly and do okay. But when times grow dark, when serious attack starts, selfish motives are just not enough. It's a terrible thing when the motivation is defective. You have probably seen Star Wars. You've read the Bible, and you have seen Star Wars. We're going to The Empire Strikes Back. You remember the Millennium Falcon? It's under attack, and Han Solo has a solution, but it doesn't work. What's their problem? They're under attack. And you hear the explosions, and Princess Leia says, oh, this is terrible. He says, watch this. And he hits the jump to light speed, and nothing jumps. And C-3PO says, I've been trying to tell you, the motivator for the hyperdrive is damaged. We can't jump to light speed. Doesn't that grip your heart? Yeah, to me, that reminded me of a passage of Scripture. You need exceptional power to push through in very, very difficult times. When you're really in the battle, you need exceptional power. And the problem is, if your motivator's damaged, you got real trouble. Hard times can come on you. You don't need to ask for them. We had our first baby in year 2. Year 4, Deborah miscarried. Year 6, she was pregnant again. We had a beautiful little girl. She was bright. She died at 7 months. An outbreak of a germ in Fort Worth killed 21 babies. She was one of them. There's now a vaccine for that. But not then. It was devastating to us. Deborah actually had a lot greater faith than I did. It took a while to get ourselves back together. We prayed for another little girl. But, you pray for it, but what do you do whenever you're desperately hurting and you don't know if God will ever? Your real motives become crucial. You have to make hard choices about which motives are actually going to drive you, your attitudes, your outlook. Again and again, we chose Christ's interests. A year later, we had another little girl. She, along with the other kids, the other 2, has been a delight to us. They all 3 have. In high school, she became the youth governor of Texas and graduated valedictorian from high school. She finished college, married an excellent young man who's a minister here in Southern California. And recently, they had child number 4 back in August. But you don't know this in 1985. You can blow up your future if you decide for the wrong motivators. Amid the hurt and the challenge, you have to choose the interests of Christ. Paul said something had driven him through the years, and I want to show it to you. There is a supreme motivation that we have, but there's something that makes it work. I want to talk about those 2 things. There's a supreme motivation. There's actually a supreme ministry value. It's a motivator that can power you through the really hard times, most desperate attacks. Here it is, 2 Corinthians 5:13 through 17. Paul's writing to the Corinthians. He planted this church, spent quite a while there. And now some fellows have moved in, false teachers, and they're starting to split it. And of course, it's a squirrely bunch anyway. But they're starting to split. He's watching his laborers go down the tubes. And he writes to them. He says, you guys think we're crazy. If we're out of our mind, it's for the sake of God. If we're in our right mind, it's for you. Just understand this, guys. For Christ's love compels us because we're convinced that one died for all, therefore all died. And he died for all, that those who live should no longer live for themselves, but for him who died for them and was raised again. So, from now on, we regard no one from a worldly point of view. Though we once regarded Christ in this way, we do so no longer. This is a tremendous statement on motivation. There is a compelling motivation, like the hyperdrive in the Star Wars scene that you didn't get to see, that I told you about. The supreme ministry value is the highest motivation. More important than anything else, it compels us. The word he uses is a word that means to grab, like you grab a criminal, and to hold him and to force him along. It's usually what the guards did to Jesus when they arrested him. This grabs us, and it forces me along. It's the love of Christ. It's his magnificent sacrificial love for me and for everyone. That motivates. And then it's my weak, echoing love back to him. But it's weak, but it still compels me. Compels my decisions and choices. Compels me to do what he prefers. Rather than the easy thing. or the thing I so strongly feel. Christ's love obligates me to love him in return. If I love him, I do what's pleasing to him. Ephesians 5:10 says, try to find out what's pleasing to God and do it. I obey him. I look out for his interest, like the interest of that Philippian church. And I try to do what might delight him. For that reason, since Christ loves me, as we planted Hope Church, we did it in such a way we did not damage other churches. Sometimes a predatory attitude develops in church planting. And the planter, anxious for his success, sees all those weak, ineffective churches and just knows that he has a right to their members. Well, ask Jesus about that, because even the Laodicean church, that awful bunch of people that everyone spits on, he says that they're his because whom he loves, he disciplines. They better watch out. So if he's concerned about them, you want to treat them well. It's crucial that the love of Christ become what you want most. But the impact of that supreme value on a minister depends on something. It doesn't kick into gear unless something happens. It depends on that person reaching a cataclysmic conclusion. There's an angle from which we see everything. We all have our viewpoint. Facebook is a good example. All kinds of viewpoints. Just among our friends, one of the values of a team is you see things from different angles. However, there are viewpoints that are gigantic, and it's important that you stand in the right place to look from those. There's an angle from which we look at things, and that they tend to determine what we expect. Our perspective regarding the cataclysmic conclusion, our perspective is the angle from which we view life, situations, decisions, people, work, problems. We have what we think is going on. It simply is. We don't think about this. It's just there. Somehow we picked it up as we moved along in life. It shapes what we see and what we think is happening. And it also shapes how we respond. Let me ask you a question. What is this? Can you see it? If you're a little bit further back, it's a little small. It looks like a pile of stuff you'd find in your neighbor's garage. Of course, not your own, but there's a chair there. There's a wheelbarrow turned up. I want to show you something. Let's take a look at this. Watch this. What is that? Well, it all depends on which angle you're looking from. You're going to constantly be looking at life and saying, pile of trash, or maybe you're mistaking. But it's crucial. This kind of art is called anamorphism. It's done so that you can only see the point from one angle. You cannot see it from others. There's a guy, Bernard Pra, who does a lot of this. You can only see the right image from one angle. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of trash. Paul is grabbed and forced along by the love of Christ because there's something that kicks us into gear. Because he's had a cataclysmic shift in what he thought was true. Cataclysm is some momentous event that just shakes everything, reshapes stuff. He's had a cataclysmic shift in what he thought reality was. Because we are convinced, he says, that Christ died for all, that they might live for him. We're convinced of this. This is just the rock bottom absolute truth. This is not merely a theological statement, friend. This is a reality statement. This is not just something sweet we sing hymns about. This is how reality works. If this is reality, Paul is convinced that the real God of the universe appeared in history and in Christ Jesus and died for sin so that we might live for him. This is reality. It's not merely a good, that'll preach. This is not really a reason for your vocation. This is reality. God has set a vertical, a plumb line in history. From now forward, reality sees a true vertical. And we know what will last beyond time. And we know what will burn. From this event forward, it is stupid to live out of line with the vertical. From this event forward, it's out of line. It's out of line with what God wants and thinks if it doesn't line up with it. That's the purpose of a plumb line. When he realizes reality, then Paul undergoes a massive, massive perspective shift. And this kicks the big motivation into gear. The massive perspective shift, here it is. So from now on, we regard no one from a worldly point of view. The world looks at stuff all the time. The world has its opinions. We regard no one from a worldly point of view. Though once we regarded Christ in this way, we do so no longer. I can't be content with what everybody else thinks is important. Paul shifts from seeing like everyone else, actually to seeing from Christ's viewpoint. He's trying to. So Paul can no longer look at people and life in the same old way. So from now on, we regard no one from a worldly point of view. He can't do this. Why? That would be stupid. The vertical is there. We're called by God, you and I are, to stand at the edge of Christ's throne and survey reality from there. Colossians 3. Set your mind on things above. You stand up there and look at this situation. So let me show you something. What do you see here? Crowded street. Street you want to avoid if you're in a rush. Yeah, that's true, but there's more. This is a picture of why Christ died. This is a picture of what he died for. If I'm in the crowded street, I'm trying to get through the crowd, but I can't simply stop with that. Let me show you another picture. What do you see? If you're up close enough, it's a really pretty neighborhood. Well, it looks like it'd probably be a great place to buy a house. And probably both those are true, but there's more. This is a neighborhood that might really be blessed by the presence of a kingdom community. A group of people who really are going to do life in line with the cross. One that honors Christ and blesses people. Now, everything that's there is valid. It's just there's more to this. Because there is a vertical. We can no longer accept the goals, ambitions, motivation, and dreams of this world. We just can't. Let me show you the big three. A seminary professor long ago told me that Billy Graham had said that ministers were really tempted by cars, women, and money. And I'll ask him about that when I get to heaven, just make sure it was him. But right now I'm blaming it on a seminary professor. The years have convinced me that if the minister is married, there's also a fourth temptation. By the way, in this photo, I made the pile of money bigger because as you get older and older, the more you realize it really takes a big pile of money to do this. So this is especially directed to you guys in your 40s and 50s. What do you see here? You're looking at this. What do you see? 4 things that are not bad. I mean, there's nothing wrong with any one of the 3. 4 very desirable things. If you're a lady, in place of the woman over there, you can substitute the latest movie hunk. Actually, what I'm looking at are the dreams of this world. This is the best that the world lives for. And you know what? These things call to my own heart. And this is why you need to be very smart about the battleground here. You're also looking at what Hebrews 3:12 and 13 calls the deceitfulness of sin. It dances before you, calling you, pulling you on, but it'll never deliver the life that you think it might. As you focus on it, actually, you grow deafer and deafer to the Lord. You get hardened to him, the scripture says. Again, these are not wrong, but they can't be the thing that motivates us. It's not enough for you to see with the eyes of this world. You have to look from the angle of Christ. So you're in a hard situation or whatever situation. The question you want to ask is not just what is going on here. You want to ask, what does Christ think is going on here? What would he say about this? If it's an extended situation, you may want to do some Bible study or ask some people that know God better where you ought to look in the Bible. You want to find out, because if you don't persistently take Christ's angle on things and look from his perspective, then in time deceit will take you. Take a look at this verse. Demas, because he loved this world, has deserted. Gone to Thessalonica. Someone said years ago, woe to the Thessalonians. Yeah. Famous guys just come into town, into the church. He's got the wrong motivations. The love of Christ becomes your driving motivation when you conclude that God has really set the vertical standard by which the world and yourself will be judged. This is what kicks the love of Christ into the biggest value. So I'm not saying that this is easy, but here's what I'm saying. The things of this world that sing that tantalizing siren song to your desires and passions, they can deceive, they cannot deliver. They will gratify, but they will never satisfy. And they will burn at the return. You will struggle to keep Christ's perspective. I'm not, like I said, this is not easy. Sometimes along the way, the money is very, very short. We're driving old end-of-life cars that people graciously have given us, and they still have a little life. And I get discouraged, and this is something I would do. I don't know if I should be proud of it or not, but I did it anyway. I'd get so discouraged, I would climb in the old car. It wasn't a clunker, but it was just, it was clunker plus. God always provided. I drive downtown Fort Worth to the magnificent towers and beautiful things that have been built. And I would drive around it, and I would say out loud to myself, one day, all this will be mine. One day, all this will be mine. One day, all this will be mine. Now, I don't know if it lasts past the burning or not, but he promised I would rule with him, that we will inherit the earth. And I needed to talk the truth to myself in a context where the truth could make sense. If you don't talk the truth to yourself, well, the enemy has plenty to say to you. The world looks at what you and I are doing. Let me show you what they see. This is what they see. And if you don't know yourself different. Now, one of the hardest things in the world is to be a minister in Los Angeles. You know why? We're cultural ornaments. We take up space and breathe air that other people are doing something productive should do. You need to know this in yourself. They look and they see that. But from Christ's perspective, all the mess that we're working with actually fits into a pattern from Christ's angle. Actually, the pattern looks more like this. There's a picture, friend. There's a vertical. Ministry is exciting and challenging work. And I'm not recommending it, but you can push forward in ministry out of normal human motivations. You can. Like I said, I'm not recommending it. But times come when you need far more power. The hyperdrive motivator has been damaged. It's impossible to tap the power that we need. Is your motivator intact? I'm not talking about do you love Jesus? I'm talking about what's your assessment of reality? What's your assessment of reality? When things go critical, have you really decided that God's vertical will be your standard? I'm not talking about getting saved. I'm not talking about singing songs or preaching messages. I'm talking about how you make decisions, hard decisions. Will the motivator be the love of Christ? Will that dictate what you do? If so, the motivator needs to be intact. So, ministry friend, what will it be? You know the world's fondest dreams, ambitions, all kinds of stuff that's really dancing in front of your eyes for a long time. The big four are always there. Is this what it is, really? I mean, as you turn 20, turn 25, turn 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, what really is it? This or God's vertical? It's always a choice. Billy Graham's choices are made. He finished well. Me, I've made a lot of choices. I still have a lot more choices to make. I would encourage you, make this choice as early as you can in life. But once you make it, you're going to keep on making it and making it and making it and making it. Do not listen to the lovely lies of the enemy, friend. There is a vertical, and that vertical goes beyond the end. And all those who align with him will not be ashamed.